and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody, on this little rainy afternoon. First, I would like to recognize Mr. Larry Creasy from Siegel High School. He has graciously joined our team after Dr. Holman has gone on to better and greener pastures, and we wish him luck. So welcome. I'm sure you can ask anybody questions if you have anything that you need to know. So if everybody's ready, I'm going to ask for the approval of the agenda.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to request that we move library materials 4.403 to the end of the agenda, because I imagine that one will have a lot of conversation and that will allow us to get through some other ones first.
Okay, so we're going to go through a bunch and we're going to move number K, or letter K, to the end. Is everybody okay with that?
A second.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. I don't feel like I'm loud. Can y'all hear me? Okay.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Approval of the agenda passes. So first one is letter A.
Okay, policy we have, policy 1.102, board members' legal status. This is an update in state law, and it adds,
Is that one working?
no, neither one.
These are working.
Probably since it's being televised. Let's see if that one's working.
This one's working.
That may not be just loud enough. I don't know. I don't feel like our mics are high enough.
Green lights turning on.
My green light's on.
This one is, but those two aren't.
Yeah, the lights on, it's working.
Okay, well, I'll just hang out here. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, I can hear you better.
Okay, so policy 1.102, board members' legal status. This is pursuant to a change in state law, and it adds other type of high school equivalency credentials approved by the State Board of Education to the requirements or the qualifications required of a board member. So prior to that, it was just graduation from high school or receipt of a GED or high set. And then that language will now be changed to graduation from high school or receipt of a high school equivalency credential approved by the State Board of Education.
So members, this time of year, we get a lot of policy changes, amendments from the legislation session. So some of the things that we're changing internally, some of it's also things that the state legislature has put into place and we need to put into policy before our school year starts.
I have a question about the second one, number 2, even though it's not highlighted. It says that being a qualified voter and resident in the county, living here for 1 year. I'm wondering if that is state law or if that's just Rutherford County law. It's state law.
I think it is, yeah.
Yep. It's
Okay,
got,
and then it doesn't say anything about being a voter or being, already have been, it says registered voter, but a qualified voter, but it doesn't say anything about voting in past elections or anything like that.
I think that would be your local parties as far as running on RRD, but I do know that 1 year prior to is something that the SEC, is that right, Francis?
Yes.
That the SEC had recently put in, so I think they're just trying to make it uniform across.
Well, that's state, okay.
and you've got the little, the note beside it. It's got one in it, then at the bottom it has the legal references. It's Tennessee Code annotated 492-201.
Okay.
Monica, I have a clarification. So under the high school equivalency credential approved by the State Board of Education, is that an umbrella term to cover the GED, high set, and all that? That's just to cover all the different types of...
Yes, and the state board may approve other high school equivalency credentials, and
Okay.
so it would encompass all.
Okay, so it's just the umbrella term that got added. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Board members, I'd also like to mention, you're going to see a lot of the ones that have an asterisk beside it, or we're going to request to approve on one read for our actual board meeting that will be in July. Those are ones that we need in place before the school year starts, but there are several that.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. I forgot to mention that.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Policy number 1102 passes.
Thank you. Next is policy 1.106, Code of Ethics. This is also one that we will be asking to pass on one reading by the board. It is also pursuant to a change in state law, and it requires the board to, it requires the board chair to serve as a point of contact for the Tennessee Ethics Commission. The director of schools shall provide contact information to the commission and ensure that any changes are submitted within 30 calendar days.
Any comments or questions? In some of this, we have several things that Dr. Sullivan's a point of contact, or I'm a point of contact, or someone else in the school is a point of contact. So it's just really updating some of the laws that are on the books. So,
Correct.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Quisenberry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion passes. Number C.
Next policy is policy 1.400, school board meetings. This is one that we will be seeking to have approved on first reading. It adds 2 additional qualifying reasons for board members to attend regular or special meetings electronically. This is pursuant to a change in state law. So it adds in we've already had work-related absence. It added in sickness or a period of convalescence. I love that word. Inclement weather, natural disaster, and military service.
Any comments or questions?
I do. Is that 3 total, or both inclement weather and an emergency of health? Or is that 6 total?
There's work-related absence is one reason. Sickness or a period of convalescence. That's 2. Inclement weather, natural disaster is 3. And then military service would be 4. Family emergency would be 5. So really there's, I guess, 5 total reasons.
Yeah, but it could match your days, so it would be 3 for each occurrence as they're
Yes, that's
outlined.
what I think.
Yeah, that's kind of how I read it, was 3 for each. And if you're in the military, I mean, I don't know that they could put a limit on that.
Right.
If you get,
I'm sorry, Ms. Quessenberry, I misunderstood your question.
yeah. I think there's 4 different categories, but I think within the categories, there's 2 or 3 days, which is great, because I think before it was 1 day or something, one time, so.
Monica, but these 3 that are highlighted are the ones we're adding, correct? Or changing?
Yes, and actually the sickness and inclement weather are new, but in reviewing the model policy, I noticed we didn't have one of the other ones. So I know there's 3 highlighted, but 2 were changes, new changes in the law.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion passes 1400.
Okay, next is policy 1.402. Notification of meetings. This would add language that all meetings with actionable items on the agenda, with some certain exceptions, and really the only exception is teacher disciplinary hearings, shall include information on how community members can participate in the public comment portion. This is pursuant to a change in state law.
Monica, just from being at the county commission meeting last week, they passed a resolution doing exactly the same thing for all their policies, but the way I read it, it still wouldn't apply to work sessions. It would just be actionable items at actual board meetings. But like this policy meeting, for example, would have to have that included in the future too.
Yes, and Mr. Reed and I spoke about it this morning. It's actionable items on the agenda, so anything that a committee takes action on. Jeff, is that your reading also?
Yes, it would not apply to work sessions because there's no action taken at work sessions, but it would apply to the policy committee. So we'll have to have some time reserved at the beginning of the policy committee meetings for people to make comments.
Would that also apply to a special call meeting?
Yes.
Because usually if there's a special call meeting, we're voting on something, purchase
So
something.
then all that's new. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Well, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to oppose or abstain? Motion passes. Number E.
Thank you. Number E is policy 1.901, charter school applications. This would add language requiring presentation of the review committee's findings to the board.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion passes. Number F.
Policy 3.202, this is the Emergency Preparedness Plan. This is pursuant to a change in state law, and it adds the armed intruder drill, incident command drill, and emergency safety bus drill to the required annual drills that are required by each school district.
That doesn't include our reunification drill, is that?
No, because reunification is not one required by law, but we do it anyways.
But all the ones that are required by law are
Are on here, the fire and safety drills, AEDs probably on the next, AEDs on the next page, yep.
And we already had, prior to this in our policy, the armed intruder drill. You'll see that language is struck out, and I've just put all three to make it concise. So they've added the incident command drill and then the emergency safety bus drill.
Could I ask a question, please? Could I ask a question of Ms. Esser? Does this say everything we need for it to say? Yes. Okay, that's what we need to know.
We don't want to go into too many specifics, Ms. Bratton.
I know.
Obviously, for security reasons.
I just want to make sure that she says we're covered. If she says we're covered, we're covered.
And if I might add, Ms. Esser, I spoke with Commissioner Wilson today, and he gave you high praise last night at the county commissioners meeting. So thank you for all your efforts, and everybody's very happy that everybody's together and doing these reunification drills and seeing what's actually going on in our schools. So thank you again for that. Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion passes 3-2-0-2.
Next policy also deals with security. It is 3.205. It adds some language to our policy. This is pursuant to a change in state law, and we're additionally asking that this be approved one reading. But it adds that all exterior doors leading into a school building shall be locked at all times, and access to the school buildings is limited only to the primary entrance during the day, as well as when students are present outside of regular school hours. And then it also adds a section for after-school hours. If there's a need to unlock the doors during a school activity, that a district employee shall be stationed by the door to ensure access is limited only to authorized persons that should be coming in for whatever activity or extracurricular is occurring.
Dr. Sullivan, a lot of this has already kind of been already in place. We're just now putting it in policy. And when we toured yesterday, there was a lot of doors that were locked that we were trying to see the classrooms. So
And
our teachers are doing a good job on that.
something that gets lost in that as well is that's something that our summer camp employees have to work through because that may not be their normal building, so we have to work on keys, and it's a logistical thing too. Something that is part of the law that's not in policy, but just for you to be aware of, if a member of law enforcement finds a door that is unlocked from the outside, it has to be reported to the principal, director of schools, chair of the board, governor, and PTO president at the school. Like that one seems strange, but I mean,
Department of Education.
Department of Education as well, yes, and we have to remedy within 48 hours.
Yeah, everybody.
Everybody else, so.
Okay, we don't want to be on that list.
No.
Let me just say that. I don't suspect we will be, though. Any comments or questions? You entertain a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Policy 3205 passes. Number H.
Number H is summer school. This is a rewrite, basically, what I've proposed. It would add the language for the third grade promotion retention law. I know we have discussed moving this because there are some portions that need to be discussed in greater detail with our instruction staff. I know Dr. Chastain wants to make sure that all the timeframes and these other requirements are carefully and thoughtfully considered. So if we could move this.
I'd request to move it to our end of summer, beginning of fall policy meeting to allow us to have time to figure out what we want to do for high school, summer school, and make sure that we get all the other things in place.
It is pursuant to a change in state law, but I think because it deals with summer programming, we still have time to implement it.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Do I need to do a vote on that? Number I, letter I.
Letter I would be policy 4.300, extracurricular activities. This is pursuant to a change in state law, and it adds the requirements of parents or guardians of students to opt in before a minor child can join a school club or participate in activities of the club.
Now, I will say that while I support it, it is also going to be a huge administrative burden on our schools. So we are going to work through it the best that we possibly can, but when you're dealing with high schools of 22 and 2,300 kids, it's going to take us, one of the required portions, the director of school shall develop administrative procedures. We're going to have some trial and error, I'm sure, through directing some of that.
So you think opting in is going to be harder versus
It is,
opting out?
from a logistics standpoint, it's in state law, so we're not going to have to, I mean, it's in place. But when you're working with that many students, requiring signatures, keeping the logistics of it, a kid doesn't go or goes when they're not supposed to, now you're looking at discipline. So there's just some logistical things we have to work through as a district with our principals. Mr. Creasy, do you want to add anything to that?
What's on there, parents sign off at the beginning of the school year, check. I don't know how we go about that. There's going to be it's hard enough getting the forms back at the beginning of the school year filled out in Skylar, so that's getting the blood form for that, so.
I'll confess, my son was guilty of that. Any comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Policy 4300 is good to go. Number J, letter J.
This one is for discussion. Policy 4.402, reconsideration of textbooks and instructional materials.
I'm going to make a motion that, or suggest that, I don't know that we needed this on here. I did add this on here because of some changes to the library materials, but I think it'll be different on that. So maybe we move this for now.
Or just adopt as is? I mean, continue as is, no
Yeah, as
action?
is, yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. So, letter L.
Letter L is
Going back to K.
policy, let me pull these out, bear with me just a sec. Letter L is policy 5.106, application and employment. This is pursuant to a change in state law, and it adds language that districts may not hire individuals who appear on lists of perpetrators of child abuse or abuse of vulnerable persons, or similar lists from other states. So Tennessee law, we currently had that we cannot employ anyone who's been identified by the Department of Children's Services as a perpetrator of child abuse, severe child abuse, so forth. But now they are adding if other jurisdictions, so we have a lot of people obviously moving to the state of Tennessee. So if they were on such a list in the prior state where they resided, they would not be employable by us. So that's the change in the law.
I think that's a good catch, because I think historically, we've had some issues with that.
We can catch all that, somebody from another state immediately, okay.
I don't think before that we could look at that.
So are we getting the, with this new change in law, are we getting the right tools to be able to detect that? To go outside of our jurisdiction? Is that part of the law?
So I have not personally heard how that will be maintained. I don't know if the state is coming up with another avenue for us to check. That is still to be determined.
Okay.
I would hope it'd be some type of interagency agreement between the,
I'm sorry?
I'm hoping it would be an interagency agreement between the local states and jurisdictions.
Sure, yeah. Hopefully.
Yep.
Well, I hope it happens
it's in
as
place,
soon as
agree.
we,
Now, it would still show up on our background check,
right,
so,
but the other piece of
yep.
sex offender.
Are we not having trouble getting background checks, though?
We still are having a huge problem, but we don't put anybody in place until it's been cleared, so the classroom just sits emptied.
Any other comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Thank you, ladies. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion passes for 5106.
Next policy is 5.110, compensation guides and contracts. And one of our staff members actually caught this one. This was approved, I believe, last summer, July of '22, for our career and technical education and occupational education teachers. I believe the board previously approved for their employment experience to be counted as 10 years instead of 5. So we wanted to make sure that our policy accurately reflected that.
And this will go a long way in being able to hire some of those CTE teachers that have a lot of experience in their field, but don't necessarily.
We're not getting
teaching
the credit,
Yeah, they're
yes.
not getting credit, so it's going to give them a little bit more of a bump in their salary. It would justify them leaving the private industry to come and work in the system.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Rosales, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion 5110 passes.
Okay, policy 5.119, employment of retirees. Removes requirement that the director of schools certifies in writing that no other qualified personnel are available to fill the position before hiring a retiree. This was a change in state law. Prior to this, it required the director to certify There was no one else available, so the state has taken that out so that we can hire retirees with a little bit more ease.
Yay.
I got a question a little bit on this, not necessarily about this policy, but how much longer does the program run where the retirees?
2025 currently, but I'm hoping it gets re-upped again. It's been running that way. I guess it's really going to depend on how much money is being taken from TCRS for that.
Sure.
That has really helped us in
Saved us,
positions.
saved us.
When you talk to our legislators, ask them to renew it.
Move to approve?
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Policy 5119 is approved.
Okay, next policy is 5.302, sick leave. And this one adds the option for employees to use their sick bank days to care for their minor children, in addition to being used for the employee's own illness. This is pursuant to a change in state law. And then we also caught a little error that we had since we changed at the last committee, policy committee meeting, that the retirees could earn sick leave. We need to take that language out of line number 7 so that they match.
Yes. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When it talks about line 22, and then it goes on down, and it talks about the people that are in your immediate family, it talks about the in-laws, where it's got mother-in-law, father-in-law, it's got grandparents, but it doesn't say anything about grandparent in-laws. So like if my husband's grandparent died, I would not get leave to go to my husband's.
Don't you think that that would include both sides?
It does
doesn't.
not. It is not listed
Does
in
not?
the statute. No.
And this is also a conversation we have with our memorandum of understanding with our Rutherford Education Association, because there have been requests for other loved ones, is a great way of putting that, not just people. So I would suggest that we leave it with statute just for that time.
With the law. Yeah.
Pets.
Agree
Just
with
make
you.
sure we're okay. Pets. We're talking to pets. No, everybody, you gotta love your pets, but
Well, and I think adding his or her minor child probably lines up with FMLA as well.
Correct.
and we did look to see if it was, we looked at seeing, could it be a dependent child? Because you may have a child that's living with you that has needs that you need to take care of, but the law strictly said minor child.
Would this include stepchildren? If you're step-parents and not, well, in these, that has to be, sometimes with step-parents, some things don't always apply, so.
Yes, stepchildren, yeah, it's down there, stepmother, stepfather, step-sibling,
Great.
stepchildren.
All right, I just didn't read that part. Awesome.
So,
That's just from personal experience, so.
Ms. Quisenberry, we'll have to hopefully go back to the drawing board and maybe add that at some point. It's a good,
Definitely.
very
Could
good.
I ask,
Your-in-law's funeral.
Yep.
And you get 3 days of that, but you can't go to your in-laws.
Grand, that's right.
That makes no sense to me.
Tell those people on the hill. Could I ask a question? Does everybody here understand what the sick leave bank is for? It's not just, I'm going to take sick leave days. The sick leave bank is something that Rutherford County put in, how many years ago? It maybe 30 or 35 years ago, to help people who run out of sick days, yet they have a critical illness, and now their minor child has a critical illness. They can apply to the sick bank to get more days. And these days are stashed away because our employees gave their days to the bank. We gave, yeah, they've still got my 2 days. But we were asked, would you be willing to give days? Not everybody gave days, but lots of people gave days. And this really is a help to those people who are critically ill and they've used all their sick days and they're still critically ill. It's a wonderful benefit. It really is.
Yes, it is.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose?
Thank you.
Policy 5.305 is the family medical leave, and this is a big change. Which we're still, before I even get started, let me tell y'all, we're still trying to get guidance from the state exactly on how this will work, which employees we're going to be reimbursed for, but basically what it says is that you can get 6 weeks, work weeks of paid leave to eligible employees after a birth, stillbirth, or adoption of a child. And this is both for male and female employees. Eligible employees would be teachers, principals, supervisors, or other individuals required by law to hold a valid license, qualification for employment, and that's a little bit of an unknown that we're still waiting to get guidance for. But the employee would notify us, they have to be employed for 12 months prior with an LEA to qualify for this. So they would get 6 work weeks paid.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to point out. If you look at lines 33 and 34, which is definitely a new way of thinking about it. This paid leave does not need to be taken consecutively. However, the paid leave shall be used within 12 months, so you don't have to take it all at one time. The second part is it is just for, again, certified staff, and it is reimbursed from the state, so it shouldn't be an expense to the district, and that's why the delineation between certified and classified, it's reimbursed from the
But we
state.
still don't know, are they going to be reimbursed their actual salary? That's what we're looking at.
Supposedly.
Supposedly 6 weeks of pay. I'm sorry, I'm stunned.
We don't know the reimbursement request. We don't know
Okay.
if it runs through E-Plan. None of that's been decided.
Okay, but this is somebody's having a baby and they take 6 weeks, they're going to be reimbursed and they don't have to use their sick days.
Or you could take 4 weeks at the beginning, wait 9 months, and take 2 more weeks.
Wow.
Or just 6 more weeks.
That's really good. It's really different. Yeah, that's.
Okay, this is quite a perk.
So they're gonna get 100% paid, it's not even 80%, wow.
And that-
I'm becoming a teacher now.
That's a big deal.
This is great because I know.
This is awesome.
I mean, look at all
Not many
this.
companies offering.
No, this is,
No
Couldn't
company.
have a baby.
The only
Did
question I
have
had
one.
on it is, do they have to notify in advance that it's going to be taken?
supposed to be 30 days, so I read that. It's supposed to be 30 days unless it's unforeseen, which then it just is as soon as possible, so.
For example, if
Yeah.
you have a premature, right, and you thought you would go longer, but then you didn't, so.
Will these cover adoptions too, parents or
What
adoptions?
does it say?
It includes stillbirth, birth, and adoption.
Okay, great.
But I do envision some budget amendments.
I don't see that.
I'm sorry?
Said I do envision some budget amendments in our future.
Oh, I'm sure,
Reimbursement
especially if
paid.
it's 100% reimbursed, yes.
May I ask a question? Has the policy always been like this, or is this also a change on line 28? In order to be eligible for this leave, they have to be employed with the school district full-time for at least 12 consecutive months. Has it always been that way?
What page are you on?
Okay.
To a file, I believe.
Yeah. Line 20.
Yeah,
And
you
that
have
part
to
came
work
state,
years,
straight from
right.
state statute.
And I think that lines up with
Yeah.
FMLA as well.
Next time.
Something that is still not clear, again, that we're waiting to get guidance on is the language in the law says with a school district. It doesn't say with your school district. So we're trying to get clarification. For example, if we have a Murfreesboro City employee that comes and works for us, does that count? So that's not been clarified, but we will work through it.
It's always about the language, for sure.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose?
Oppose.
Are y'all taking notes? Somebody taking notes? Okay. Ms. Bree- 3505. Thank you.
Policy 5.307, physical assault leave. So we've always had this policy, but this clarifies that teachers will receive their full salary and benefits while on leave due to physical assault pursuant to a change in state law. So prior to this change, they could receive workers' compensation or comparable benefits, but this would entitle them to their full salary and full benefits until the teacher is released by their physician to return to work.
I'll tell you, one of the big things superintendents talked about was making sure that it was workers' compensation and then the district paid the difference, not both. So it's just to the total amount. No, just to the total.
Any comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion. Thank you so much.
Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Policy 5307 passes.
Okay. Policy 5.310, vacations and holidays. We have a few changes to this one. So it adds Juneteenth to the list of holidays pursuant to the adoption by the state. Additionally, it also sets a 10-hour workday for the July 4th holiday for the 12-month employees that work the 410s during the summer schedule. And then Dr. Martin pointed this out. We also need to do that for the Juneteenth holiday, since that falls during the summer months. And then Dr. Sullivan, you had another change to this one, the Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that'll be something I just come back before the board and ask, depending on what the, so this last year, we were closed in accordance with the courthouse when they closed the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, but I'll wait to see what their holiday calendar is. And we were open this past Monday. County and government officials were not, and so part of the reason we looked at that is this was put in state law and signed by the governor after we had already submitted our summer plans, and so we have to submit summer waivers on the exact number of days that we have to submit, and so that is the reason that we were open, because we had already had our calendar approved. So we had not a lot, but several questions about that.
And so number 30, line 32 should be 4th of July and Juneteenth.
Correct. Yes, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the July 4th, lines 31, 32, without the Juneteenth.
Is there a second?
Can I ask, we're doing this in accordance with the state law that has come out,
The state law.
correct?
It is a state law.
Okay.
Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. I'll entertain another motion.
Move to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Mr. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. Yes, letter S.
Okay. Policy 5.600, staff rights and responsibilities. This would add language that teachers are required to report students who commit certain offenses, and those include assault and battery or vandalism on school property that endanger the life, health, or safety of others. This is pursuant to a change in state law.
Did we not have something like this already in place?
Not in policy, but in practice, yes.
Okay.
I think this will probably just help us when an assault or something like that happens to further be able to send them to, our virtual school.
It also helps educators know that they have the ability to do that without feeling like they're doing something wrong against a child or whatever happens, that they have it backed in policy and law to do that.
Yeah. And now we've got other options for the students that are just not left out. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Policy 5600 passes.
Okay, next policy is 6.200, attendance. This one is on for discussion. There was a change in state law that now allows local boards to allow credit for released time courses. It's not mandatory that we adopt, but it's something I wanted to put on for discussion. I have asked Dr. Martin to give us some input on these kind of courses and what those are, and if we give credit for those, or how that would work to help the committee decide if this is something that we want to adopt.
Currently, we only give students a credit if it is from a Tennessee state accredited program. So if we have a student that comes in from a homeschool situation, if it's a Tennessee state homeschool accredited program, then they obviously get credit on the transcript. But if it's not Tennessee accredited, we do not give them credit on the transcript.
It would not be my recommendation to add this when we're dealing with high school diplomas and dealing with transcripts and credits, when scholarships, course offerings. The state has their approved list, and we have the ability to do that through other institutions. I feel like this opens up a wealth of things that people may want credit for, that we may give credit for, that would potentially hurt kids in the future.
I'm open to postponing this if board members would like to study this a little bit longer.
Yes. This is pursuant to a change in state law, and it removes the requirement for proof of immunization for the student. Also requires the acceptance of a high school equivalency credential approved by the State Board of Education, similar to the one that we had for board members, and this would be for parents or guardians. So right now, the requirement was that a parent possess a high school diploma, GED, or HiSET. So that would change it to possess a high school diploma or high school equivalency credential approved by the State Board of Education. Again, that kind of umbrella of what they will approve, and then takes out the requirement that the parent or guardian submit proof to the director of schools that the homeschool student has been vaccinated.
We still do. So there's a couple of things, if you don't mind, I wanted to hit on this. So this is one that I believe is, it's not a caption bill because it's a bill signed into law, but it's one that definitely has a lot of other things attached to it. TSSAA is watching this as well, because you may have students with homeschool who are no longer required to be vaccinated, around students who are required to be vaccinated, because that still is a public school requirement. There was other language that was attached to this law that did not pass out that will be brought back up next year, that involves allowing homeschool students to come and go throughout the school day for courses as they see fit, which would be a logistical challenge for districts, to say the least. And I won't get on that soapbox right now, but this is one that it's state law, so we have to follow it, but from a district having to operate one way and homeschool another way, it's definitely a discrepancy, to say the least.
We currently allow students that participate in JROTC and are homeschooled to come in, and I think we have one or two that are doing that at our high schools.
Because that's a federal law we're required to do.
Right. It's not frequent, but again, that would be a difference if that student is no longer required to be vaccinated, but is coming into our school building where the rest of our student population is.
So this is for if they're homeschooled. So if they go to public school system, are they have to require it for proof of immunization? Because they're leaving the homeschool to the public school. Yes?
As of right now, yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's just not at homeschool.
Right, at home.
But if they transfer in, they do have to.
Any comments or questions? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank Ms. Quisenberry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? 6202 passes.
Okay, policy 6.300, code of conduct. Added, it adds threats of mass violence to the list of zero tolerance offenses. As you all know, we have just a handful that are considered zero tolerance. Threat of mass violence was not previously on there, but now has been added. So that is one that a student can be expelled for a period of 1 year.
Several of us have spoken to our legislators about putting something in place, and Representative Stevens had a great idea for those who put threats out on the internet to try to reduce that in classroom disruption. And his first thought of that was to deny driver's license for the students. So now that, my son wouldn't care if he didn't have his driver's license when he was 16, but a lot of kids would. So there's several of us that are working with the legislators that are trying to mitigate those learning loss days as well.
This needs to be on there.
Yep. Any comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion to adopt 6.3.
Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion 6300 passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next policy, this one is marked for discussion, is 6.303, interrogations and searches.
I can speak to this one because I asked for it to be put on here. Really just kind of wanted to open up discussion amongst some administrators, some teachers, some parents. I've spoken with a couple of law enforcement officials. The word interrogate being used in here is an extremely strong word. It was even brought to my attention that it could potentially cause a legal issue if a parent was to take it to that level. I would like to see it kind of discussed and maybe detailed a little bit more. Dr. Sullivan and I briefly discussed it. I certainly don't want to make more work for our principals, and I don't want them to have to turn around and call parents every time somebody pushes somebody in a hallway. But as a parent, it's very concerning for me that if something of a more serious nature were to have occurred, not a life-threatening situation, this would not pertain to life-threatening situations, that my underage, still a child, could be in a room with an authority figure and be interrogated without my knowledge and or permission. And I have an issue with that. So I really just kind of wanted to open it up for discussion to just see where everybody kind of was landing on it, to see if we can maybe reword it, put some more details in there, and maybe give some more clarification and some more details on what it might look like moving forward.
What type of situations are you thinking before we?
One that was discussed was if somebody was accused of sexual assault. For a child, whether they did it or not, I could tell you, like, if I was ever called to the principal's office, it's going to make me nervous to begin with. So if you're sitting there for someone to interrogate you, it's not listed as like fact-finding or simply asking questions about a situation. The word interrogate is used. That's an extreme, like, that's something of a law enforcement nature, not really a principal situation. So I don't know if we just need to change verbiage, and I'm not saying a parent has to be there. Like if we want to word it to say you can just call and the parent can give you permission to speak to their child, or they can stay on the phone while you question their child, or they can choose to come in. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the best answer is. I just think it's worthy of a discussion amongst our committee to see where the consensus falls, I guess. I had never seen this policy before, and I was searching for something else, and I came along it, and when I saw that word, I was just like, wow, that's a pretty strong verbiage.
There's, throughout school day at school, we deal with numerous of incidents. And if we stopped, I mean, we'd have to be so specific, and there's so many different things that comes up. We'd have to stop what we're doing all day to make phone calls or to call, or wait till them to come up there. I just think that, I don't know if there'd be enough
Picture, write down everything that took place in the school day that we do this.
And I would think with the sexual abuse, that would be handled a little bit different. I don't think, I don't know, I've never been in this situation, but I would think, I wouldn't think law enforcement would be dialed right away. I think it would be handled as an investigation first, right?
Can I hit on that?
Yeah,
So-
sexual
yeah.
abuse. It would.
So if it involves a sexual type nature, so this gets into our MOU with the Sheriff's Department. And so the Sheriff's Department by law has to act. And we have conversations with the Sheriff's Department. You'll see it in policy because it is in our policy. But if the local law enforcement feels like a crime has been committed, they don't care what our policy states, and have said those exact words multiple times. And so when they're in a school system, and this is just an extreme example, because I'm just using because it's a criminal offense. If it's a criminal offense, we do say that, and that's why we have it. We serve in place of the parent during the school day. And so you'll see that's why the principal or his or designee should be present during the interrogation with the police department. But I could definitely see a change in wording from interrogation to questioning or something, because that would help differentiate the two. You know, police department is doing the interrogation. We're not necessarily interrogating kids. We're questioning them to figure out what in the world they did wrong, or if they were mini weed or punched somebody, or who knows what they happened to do that day.
But if
Or
they're
that
18,
minute.
you don't have to call their mom. There's a lot of kids that are 18.
Would it be better if you put criminal conduct, accused of criminal misconduct or criminal infraction?
No.
Instead of like.
No, you are tying the hands of administrators. I can see a change in language. That doesn't bother me. I don't want to change this policy in any way. But if the word interrogation bothers you, come up with a better word. Questioning?
I would just, the word,
Questioning, interrogations, and searches, because there is an interrogation part of this policy.
I agree with where you're coming from criminal. Just when you're talking about criminal, any kid can bring up a civil charge at any time. And so someone could argue that, yeah, there's criminal and civil, but I could see a parent or a kid saying, well, you violated your policy because you just said that was criminal, where
It might
anything
not
can
be,
criminal.
right.
I think I've past instances where a first grader might spit on somebody else, and might even spit on
Yeah.
me. And I would take it to the principal's office, and we didn't call the parents.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about like lower, I don't know if it would be more of the zero tolerance offenses, and like I said, not ones that are life-threatening, because nobody's stopping to call parents at that point. But, Mr. Brooks, did you have?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just think it's the wording. You know, as a parent, who's been an administrator at a facility where there's students, now mine was K through 12th grade, we did the same thing. I agree. You don't have all day to stop and pick up a phone and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Now for me, when I was doing my job, I had to pull students and go, okay, this is what was told to me, this is what we're gonna do. I never wanted to use interrogate, because when I hear interrogation, I think, what they talking about? Hold on, wait a minute. Because I think police all the time, you know, when I hear interrogation. And what you don't want to do with these, whether they're 18 or not, any kid, like my daughter is 15, and I have to think, if my daughter hears interrogation, what is she going to react to? How is she going to respond? What's going to be the way that she handles this? I don't have a problem with the principal pulling her. If my daughter does something that breaks that code of conduct, you better pull her, because that's what you're getting paid to do. Now, whenever you call me and talk to me, but let's not use the word interrogation, because then I'm going to have a problem with that. And so I get what you're saying. As a parent, when you see interrogation, it strikes this thing up in you that wells something in you of how severe, what happened. Won't go into detail. Had a situation with my daughter at the school she used to go to. They called, they used words like that. And it immediately threw me into this thing of, okay, what'd you do? Like, what is going on? And I started to question my child. Now, this was after hours, so I started to question her in a certain way. And it really had nothing to do with the school itself. It had everything to do with something that happened outside of school, but it was a case of mistaken name at that point. And so I think with the wording, I think we're dead on with the wording.
The policy doesn't need to change. I don't think, God bless administrators. God bless all of you, because you are busy and you are dealing with things. And Robert Brooks doesn't expect anybody to stop and go, I need to call Mr. Brooks and let him know right now. No, I don't believe that's what she's saying. I believe what she's saying is when we have these infractions and these things that happen in our schools, the word interrogation just completely blows everything out of proportion. And then when you get a parent that you call and they hear interrogation, now it's going to make it 100 times harder on you as an administrator, because now you have to deal with that parent. And what we have to be careful of is, and I'm not saying we need to skirt around things just to fit the societal thing. No, hear what I'm saying. There are parents out there that are waiting for you to mess that up and waiting for you to use the word interrogation. And then instead of sitting here talking about this, we're on the court. And they're looking for money. So I get what she's saying, like that, at the heart of it, that's the truth right there. There are parents that are sitting waiting, and they're lurking to wait for that to happen.
I would agree, so I just, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. The word interrogation does not bother me when the police are involved. But if it's just the principal and maybe the guidance counselor and the classroom teacher, interrogation, in my opinion, is too strong. But if the police are involved, interrogation doesn't bother me, because that's what police do. Police do interrogate.
You can keep the policy but change the word.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Investigation work?
Yeah, investigation, because that's what you're doing, is investigating.
I would like just that line 1 to maybe say questioning by school personnel and then change the interrogate word in line 3 to question. I would be good with that, I think.
Would you want to add the questioning, like I just said, questioning, comma, interrogation?
We can add it to the main description. We could do that too. That would be my suggestion, I think, because I think it just puts it at a more appropriate level. Obviously, police can interrogate if that's what that's not our jurisdiction, but it just seemed very strong. And when I did speak to some law enforcement officers, they agreed that that really wasn't probably the right verbiage to be using in that.
In 21 years as AP and principal, I don't think I've ever used the word interrogation. I can question students all day long. And if it gets to a situation where we need the police involved, then
It bumps, right.
I appreciate that, Ms. Darby, because I was worried. So looking at state law, it says the intent of the General Assembly enacting this part to secure a safe environment. General Assembly recognizes the position of the schools and principals as serving as loco parentis. So I agree 100% with where you are, because it truly is a difference between questioning and.
Well, and I don't want to his point, someone that's jumping to go to the legal system for something, that word is probably just not what we need in there, so.
And Mr. Brooks is right. We do need to be protected legally. I mean, nobody wants what happened about 12 years ago to happen again.
No. Could I add something? I know back when we had corporal punishment, which I'm certainly still in favor of, and I always signed off on my son. But one of the things I think that we had at the time was there was, do you want to be called or not? Is that something that we could add to?
I think it's another layer that principals are then going to have to go through logistically, and I think it goes back to not.
Don't put any.
I would rather stay with the policy. As
Okay, I'm just talking out loud.
Make a motion.
I appreciate it. Yep.
Okay, so I make a motion that we change the descriptor term to questioning, interrogations, and searches. Line 1, replace interrogations with questioning, and line 3, replace the word interrogate with question.
Second.
Are you going to make the same change from interrogate to question throughout that entire paragraph and read the headings?
No, because that addresses the police.
Yep, that would be
I'm just addressing the school personnel.
1 through 3. Lines 1 through 3, okay.
It's really just logistics is what you're talking about. Semantics.
It's just kind of clearing it up, I
Yes,
think,
semantics.
making it,
Well, like Mr. Brooks just said, using certain language can accelerate the emotions
Yes.
really quickly.
And that's one of the things I know that Patty has worked on, trying to de-escalate. Sometimes by the time the story gets to the parents or, by the time it gets around the mountain a couple times, it's a whole lot more than what it really was. So, was there a second? Was that Mr.
I second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Changes to 6303 pass. Good job.
6.3090, zero tolerance offenses. This is the exact same language that we just had in the Code of Conduct. It just adds the threats of mass violence on school property or a school-related activity to the list of zero tolerance offenses.
And this is from the state.
Yes, pursuant to change in state law, correct.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you so much. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion 6309, or policy 6309 passes.
Policy is 6.319, alternative education. This is a change in state law, but it mirrors what we have already been doing. For alternative education, it adds another statutory reason for the director of schools to require a student to serve a suspension at home rather than on school property if it endangers the safety of students or staff.
I like 9 and 10.
I do too. And
Good policy.
we've been using it, but this puts it in policy.
Yeah.
Yes, we have, haven't we?
Works well.
Yes.
Well, there's no question that we want our kids educated, but sometimes it's not conducive for everyone to be educated. So, and there's a disruption.
Move to approve.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion 6319 is passed.
Next motion is 6.4001, student surveys, analyses, and evaluations. This is also pursuant to a change in state law, and it would add the requirement of parents or guardians to have to opt in before a minor child participates in a non-instructional survey, analysis, or evaluation. Sometimes we get these requests from outside agencies who want to do a survey or something like that, and so this would require parents to have to opt in before their child can participate.
I think that,
This also got, we'll also get our AP capstone, that, all that.
I think this is great, because I know some big computer companies who shall not be named likes to give money or equipment, but they also want to collect data at the same time, so just my personal opinion.
The only one that I want to bring up, because this one will, I should have notified the board about it earlier. It didn't have any issues. So I don't know what department with the state of Tennessee does this, but they have high school seniors, actually high school students, that every single year they select to do the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Every year I go through and modify it, and we go through about a 6-month argument because there are questions that are inappropriate, sexual in nature. It's developed by the state of Tennessee, and it's asking youth, like, how often do your parents do? I mean, and that's kind of business.
What?
There's lots of questions, so. There's lots of questions, so I will say that. However, we make modifications. It's about a 6-month timeline that we make the same arguments and modifications every year. You guys actually participated in it this year, and he knows they had to approve it. Those questions get removed.
Kids going to be
Yep.
answering?
No, but the reason I bring that one up is because we are obligated to do it with the modification. It also is part of all the opioid settlement money that the county commission gets. So that is the reason, part of it, that we do to look at the substance abuse in our community. So when you hear, it'll probably be next spring, and I'll remind you again, a youth risk behavior survey. It is the one that we will require parents or ask parents to opt their kid in, but it is one that does have some strong questions to it. But
And it's required?
it is required for our local county commission to be able to accept the opioid money. It is also it used to be part of the coordinated school health grant as part of the state of Tennessee, but now that's part of TISA. So I don't know that there's a TISA portion tied to it anymore, but it was a requirement.
But we can't make anybody fill it out.
No.
But parents have to opt in if they want to participate.
Yep.
which is, opt-in is always a good.
I tell you, the first time I read it and the second time I read it in the last 2 years, I was like, there's no way in the world this is going anywhere. And I kindly got calls telling me I had to do it, so.
I have a question. What does it cost to run a survey through our school system with 50,000 kids? Do we have an idea?
Very little, as I tell you, Dr. Chastain and I, we have educational surveys that we have students who are teachers for us that submit quite a bit, and unless they are a teacher for us and it doesn't disrupt instruction, we usually deny them. So we do very little, if I can't even remember the last time we had one that was district-wide. Because they would have to have access to all of our information, and we don't just give that out to anybody.
But doctoral students or that kind of,
They can submit, but we
Submit.
review it all and make sure, and Kelly and I have denied quite a few in the last couple of years.
okay. But we still look at those kinds of requests?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, sure. I think you almost lost Ms. Bratton down there. On some of those questions.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion. Move to approve. Thank you, Ms. Stiles. Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. I need some more Pepsi. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone wish to oppose or abstain? Policy 64001 passes.
Thank you. Policy 6.402, physical examinations and immunizations. This also changes from opt-out to opt-in. So it adds language to give parents or guardians the ability to opt out of health screenings. I'm sorry, I said it backwards. To opt out of health screenings conducted as part of the coordinated school health program. This is pursuant to a change in state law.
Are we still doing scoliosis? No, okay.
Yes.
We are?
Is it not?
Oh, we're not? Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought
Are we still doing the lions and the vision?
That I think we are.
I know that we are because my children have been through it.
That's actually a very good one. They caught my son, and I had no idea.
So these are the ones, I'm just making sure I understand this. We used to get the papers we had to sign in order for them to be able to participate. Now we're having to sign for them to not participate?
Yes, you can excuse your student from participating.
Okay. My question there is, will they be given notice that these are going to be occurring prior to? Because in this, it just reads that the results, screening results, parents will be notified of screening results.
So I'm trying to pull it up real quick. It's the Public Acts of 2023, chapter number 353. So it's got Tennessee School Health Screening Guidelines. I'm trying to find it real quick.
Okay. Thank you.
I do think they give notice.
Well, they have, but that's because before you had to give permission. They're flipping it now, and there's nothing in the policy that I'm reading that says that they're actually going to give you notice prior to.
So you have to know that it's coming to be able to opt out.
So can we add that line that was crossed out, because he said the school district will not conduct physical examination of a student without parental consent. So if this is an automatic opt-in and you have to opt out, but you don't know when it's going to happen, I would think we would want to give parental consent first in order for them to be opt-out, right?
I would think so, yes.
It does make sense.
But it's the state law is removing the parental
Right,
consent.
and I'm saying let's add it back in to say require parental consent.
I don't know legally if we
Still
can do
being
that.
legal.
State law, we can't.
But state law automatically opts it in?
These screenings are required.
Right.
Okay, under the Tennessee Department of Ed and the Department of Health. And Ms. Groom, correct me if I'm wrong. But right now, with this change in policy, you can excuse your child from participating.
I think the question still on the table is how will the parent know when to opt out?
That's what Dr. Sullivan's trying to look up.
Can we make sure that they know?
We can give them a notification,
We
can't
have to give them notification.
Yeah,
30 days.
yeah.
Is there not a question on Skyward about this?
I have no idea.
And,
Hear that, Solomon?
yeah, Miss,
Yeah, the link
that's Miss
doesn't
Stitzel's
work.
department, but I know from my own child, you know, we would be sent notification home saying on, you know, August 31st.
I guess
X, Y,
my
and Z
point
is
would be, I think since they've taken out the parental consent for the state law, that we add in the policy that we will be sending notice prior to.
Yeah.
I would like to see that as part of the policy, since the parents are actually having to opt out instead of opt in, so that it's in our policy that we are going to give parents notice that these screenings will be occurring to give them the opportunity to opt out.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that piece is added back on.
Is that a question of Skyward? Dr. Sullivan?
Help form in Skyward for parents when they register?
They choose the opt-in or opt-out?
Yes.
Because I know with kindergarten and first grade, and I think there used to be something in fourth grade, you would have kids that, well, these kids aren't going, so they'll stay in the classroom, but the rest of the class, they'll go to wherever they're supposed to be screened at.
That's because they had to opt in, though. So now what they're saying is they're going to do it to every kid unless a parent says, my kid's not doing this. But we have to understand, too, that for our parents, they're used to having to give permission, not having to take it away. So I just want to make sure that we're covering our bases as far as everybody understands.
We just need to add notification.
Yeah, I just need to add that language.
Can we do that, or can we table this to run it through the next school board meeting? What do you suggest, Dr. Sullivan?
I think we're fine just to add,
A notice requirement.
Is everybody okay with that?
yeah, because I'm reading TDOE's language, it says TDOE encourages LEAs, so.
So how did the state screw this up?
So can I make a
Seems like one part of the state's not talking to the other part of the state.
Because this is the state and the law will always be
And,
funky.
yeah, and so that everybody's clear, what we're talking about is vision, hearing, blood pressure, and BMI. Those are the height and weight. That's all that's
Right.
done.
So can I make a motion that we add to this policy that we will be giving parents notice prior to the screenings?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose? Motion passes to add the additional language. What was it? Vision, blood pressure? Height and weight, okay. I don't even do that at the doctor's.
Ms. Darby, are you okay with adding that language to, before the highlighted section?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 01, so that's not 02.
Just the other one, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be line 20.
It'll be line 16.
We scroll to the next one, that's the different one.
You add extra line on line 16.
Yeah.
Towards the end of 16.
I forgot to point out, I apologize. I also took out some language on page number 2, it's line 6 and 7. To me, it felt a little bit unnecessary, regardless of epidemic or pandemic status, religious exemptions related to vaccinations for COVID-19 or any variants will be accepted by RCS in compliance with state law if RCS ever required such a vaccine. Obviously, we're never going to require that, or well, we don't require that vaccine. I think that language was probably put in when the pandemic was happening.
Thank you.
BB, are we at BB?
Pardon?
BB?
BB, yes, almost last one. Policy 6.405, medicines. This would add language to allow students 15 years of age or older to keep prescription medication in their vehicle for the purpose of taking medication after school hours and off school property. This is not pursuant to a change in state law, but was requested by a board member to be added to the.
I have questions about this one. I'm very sensitive about this, because there are a lot of medications out there, and kids give pills away, kids sell pills, and there can be some very unintended consequences from this. And there's a reason why you give your medication to the nurse, and the nurse hands it out to you. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't believe that, especially in this day and age right now with what we're been going through the last couple of years, our kids, are taking pills. They're drinking, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And I wouldn't feel comfortable knowing that this was on our school grounds, and in their car is on school grounds. Because all it takes is one kid.
You don't think there's drugs on our school grounds?
Oh, I know there are, but I don't want this. This is adding to.
If I could speak to it, because I asked for this to be put on here, and I'll tell you why. My son, there are days where he goes straight to work from school. So when he has to take antibiotics, or if he has an infection, he's got to take steroids, he doesn't have time to go home and get medication before he goes to work. So the purpose of this is for responsible students whose parents are okay with them holding on to their prescribed medication that is in their name to be left in their vehicle for them to take off of school property. I feel what you're saying. This policy isn't going to change the kids who are doing what you're talking about. I'm putting this in place for the responsible kids who actually need medication and are working and don't have time to drive home first and then go back to work to go take their antibiotic or whatever said medication is.
Could they possibly leave their medication in the office, front office, and before the end of the day, just go by and pick it up? And then as they're leaving?
Personally, for me, I think that's,
Ms. Groom says no.
I think that's requiring a lot more of our nurses, and I think that's requiring a lot of parents to have to sign a form every single time their kid has to take something, and their kid have to turn it in every single day for an antibiotic or a steroid or something of that nature, because you're worried about the kids who aren't going to care about this policy anyway.
And we're talking also about sunscreen and ointments and different things like that. I mean, it's crazy that the nurses have to take care of sunscreen.
No, for this to happen, I think I'm reading this right. A written consent form must be signed by a parent or guardian, so the parent will have to sign off on it.
Correct.
I'll say that I reached out to Dr. Gamble, who is our medical director and advises me on these type situations. And I also reached out to Amanda Johnson, who is our state school health liaison. Both of them advised us against putting this in policy. If you allow me, I'll read what Dr. Gamble said. She said medications should not ever be stored in cars due to extreme temperatures. Furthermore, unmonitored, unsecured medications among teenagers can lead to medication sharing or theft of medication, which can be very dangerous and even life-threatening if taken by someone other than the person for whom it's prescribed. She understood the reason behind it, but said that all medication on school property should be handled by school nurse. Very similar response from Amanda Johnson. She also pointed me to national guidelines, which says that if we have school medications on school property, they must be stored according to manufacturer recommendations. And if we discover that they are not, they must be discarded. So if we add this to policy, then we're not following any medical guidance or guidelines. I think it puts us in a difficult situation when my husband's a pharmacist. I consulted with him, and he said never would a pharmacist recommend that you leave any medication at all in a vehicle. Inhalers can explode at 120 degrees. So just need to be careful with that language. There may be a better solution.
And as a parent, and I understand what you're saying, but from my home, my daughter took her very first stimulant from a kid that was responsible who had that. And that opened the door for a life of being in drugs for the past so many years. That was just the tip of the iceberg. This right here, just to me, as a parent who's dealt with a daughter who's had issues with substance abuse since she was 15 years old, screams access, more access to the drugs. And yes, there's responsible, but I'm a parent too who wants to be responsible for my daughter who's had trouble with this. And I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying, but no one was there with me in helping finding my daughter when I couldn't find her because the access started at school at 15 years old.
So can I ask,
For me, I can't, I'm
what
sorry.
would be the, I guess, appropriate, because that's also personal to me, because my own son would have had, if he were driving age, would have had to take medication probably right as school was getting out too. What would be a recommendation for appropriateness?
We have made exceptions. Of course, the law that or the guidelines that we operate under say that we should medications given during school hours. There's been exceptions that we make. Say a student is a football player and needs a medication. We make those exceptions on a case-by-case basis. Maybe we sign in that medication. We train the football coach as a med administrator. Like there are case-by-case exceptions that we make to make exceptions in those situations.
And that's putting the responsibility on the untrained medical staff.
Right, well, every school has, which
You're back
has
to,
those.
You're back to the student having their own medication.
So you would, but it's locked up in the nurse's office. So Tennessee guidelines do require that medications be locked and secured. So if you kept those medications in a vehicle, then we would be then required to check to make sure that vehicle is always locked and secured. But then, of course, we're not storing it properly, so that kind of negates that. But in medications, even controlled medications are behind two locked doors. So we're very careful about access to medications.
So I guess my question still remains, in a situation where a child works, they're on, and I'm personally strictly talking about things along the nature of antibiotics, steroids, stuff like that. But they're not going to take it during school hours. I guess my question would be, where is the answer then? Because there's no reason that they can't keep it in a cooler with an ice pack in their vehicle and not have an extreme temperature. But I respect and understand everybody's concern with the locked vehicles and stuff. It still doesn't change. And I don't think this is a lot of kids, but it still doesn't fix their issue, I guess would be my question.
I think from our standpoint, we focus on things that need to happen inside the school and related to school activities. And so if you work at Moe's after school, then that needs to be handled between the parents and the student. And I don't think that we need to be in the middle of that. Maybe. And you're right, that probably at any given time you could go check several vehicles out in the parking lot and you'll find an ibuprofen, or, there's things that we obviously can't control, but I don't think that we need to make it a policy.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because what happened with a student was that somebody accused them of something, and so because of that, their vehicle was searched. Their own named non-controlled substance medication was in their vehicle, and they were zero tolerance for it. And I would be upset if my son got zero tolerance because he had his antibiotics in his car. I would have an issue with that, and that child was going from school to work. So the problem is that there is this problem. I would love for us to find a solution that everybody is comfortable with for these few children that are in that. Some of these kids have to work. They don't have an option.
That's why I was asking for the office or the nurse to hold on to the medicine until the end of the day and then stop simply.
But I think that's the problem for the student as well. The student is thinking, I don't have time to go to the office because I can't get out of class, number one. Or once I get out of the class, the nurse is busy or the office is busy. And they're thinking, I have to be to work at 4 o'clock. If I get out at 3:30 and I have to drive 20 minutes down the road, but there's traffic, because I have to beat the school traffic. They're not. What if they're in a class that they need educationally? The teacher may go, hey, we're taking a test today, this is what we're doing. He can't just get up and leave during the middle of that test if he's not done, or she. You know, so that's what they're thinking, and that's from a student's perspective. And let's just be real. Let's be real for a second. It's happening. Regardless of whether we want to say it is or not, it's happening. Students are doing it. They're bringing medications to school. It's all happening that way. You're always going to have a conflict because going to the nurse directly after school is a conflict for that student. Now, I'm hearing what everybody's saying because I have kids too. I have a child that has to take medication. And for me, when it was time for her to have to take that medication, I had to make it work for my schedule. That means I had to leave work. And that means I had to drive to the school. That means now I'm missing time from being at work to go to the school because if I don't feel comfortable enough to leave it at the nurse, or she can't leave class to don't get it, or the nurse, whatever may happen, I will feel more comfortable being the parent administering that to her. High schoolers, you got a lot of parents that's going, even though it's in policy, because there's a policy that says you have to turn this medication in to the office, to the nurse. Here, you're the nurse, I need you to take that. Parents aren't gonna do that. There are some parents going, forget that policy. This is what we're gonna do. You have to take this medicine immediately when you leave school. So here, you take that and you take it to school with you. You keep it how you need to keep it. And regardless of whether they're bringing it in school or leaving it in their car, that's happening. So I think what Mrs. Darby is trying to say is how do we get to a point to where we can alleviate that? I'm just gonna be real. We may not be able to get to a point where we can alleviate that with anything right now. But we just all have to know it's going on. We know what's going on. They're breaking the rule. We can't police everybody. Just like in the same sense, and I guess I'm kind of playing the devil's advocate here. In the same sense, this policy probably won't work. I see this and I go, oh boy. And it's not just the fact that kids can sometimes be out of their mind and here, check that. Forget that, that's happening anyway. It's happening, kids are skipping school and they're all taking pills and they're smoking marijuana. They're doing it all. This is no hidden fact, it happens.
Yeah, I agree with you, it does, but.
And so here's the thing. Instead of let's sit here and try to find the real solution, and we probably won't. So let's try to figure out either how to administer this or we need to just vote it out and get rid of it.
So antibiotics is not a non-tolerance offense, but Adderall is. And Adderall will be considered something that the kid will want to have in the car after school because for whatever reason. So if they have that, a parent as a responsible parent, and they go to the car and they're 15 years old and they had friends there and they all take it, that is a zero tolerance right there. They can sell that drug to the kids right there because this policy will allow someone who has a prescription of Adderall go to the car and after hours they can give it to the friends, they can sell it for whatever reason because we made it possible for them to have it. So with antibiotics, it's not a control, it's not considered zero tolerance, but Adderall is. So how are you going to circumvent those kinds of situations when you have the zero tolerance drugs? Because it's not just for Adderall, it's also for the pain medication as well.
I have a quick question. For situations such as your son, is it possible to write in a 504 plan special situations that a staggered schedule would be needed during dismissal so that that student can access their medication in a timely manner? Do 504s allow for different scheduling adaptations?
I'm sure you could, yes.
I think 504 plans would require they require meetings with, that's like a whole nother, but I don't know if maybe allowing our principals, maybe if a parent sends a note in and says, hey, so-and-so's on antibiotics for the next 10 days, can he check it in with the nurse and can he leave his last class 10 minutes early to come get it?
Our current policy says the parent must bring all medications to school. So parents, just like you were saying, parents have to be, you do not want students transporting that medication. That's our current policy and that's Tennessee guideline, that's national guidelines, and that's.
We could work out something that if the child needed to leave class, 15 minutes before the bell rings to take his medication.
Oh, yeah. Well, we do that all the time.
Except that now you're saying the parents got to actually go and check it in.
But they always,
They've always done that.
That's
Yes.
already a policy.
But you're doing that until, I mean, when these kids are in, I don't have to check Garen's medicine. Like, he takes his medicine, he does what he needs to do. He's a very mature, responsible kid, and I'm not saying that there aren't kids that aren't or are, but it's almost like we're punishing the kids who are doing what they should do because of the kids who don't. And I'm sorry, this policy is not going to stop the kid that wants to sell Adderall to his friends. Policy exists or not, they're going to do it.
happens.
But, well, thanks for wishing that on me.
I'm not wishing things on you at all. I'm just
What if we
saying, as a
postpone
parent that's
this
gone through this,
for the next policy meeting, and it will give everybody time to maybe investigate some other options, have
I
some more
will say,
discussion?
I know that we talked a little bit about the zero tolerance and the drug-free policy that we already have. The wording in that says unlawfully possessing a prescription medication. So if your child did bring a prescription medication that was prescribed to them, antibiotic, and had it in their vehicle, and that vehicle was searched, I don't think that's unlawful. So if that was the hesitation or the reason for it, I think we were okay already. They're not unlawfully possessing their own prescription antibiotic. Now, if they had their own antibiotic and they were passing it out to friends or Adderall, then they are unlawfully possessing.
I think it was because it was a violation of our school medication policy that it had not been checked in with the nurse. I think that's where the issue came in, which is why I was trying to find a way to just appease and help out some of these kids who are in these situations who can handle stuff.
So could we do a carve-out on uncontrolled substances?
Wouldn't this fall under Code of Conduct Level 4 right now? That's what we looked at. And so this situation shouldn't have involved zero tolerance. There was another thing involved with it as well. It wasn't just this medication, and I'm not going to get into the details around it. But right or wrong, there was other thing as well, but it did cause the search of the car. And so when we talked about it earlier today, instead of doing hey, it's a level 4, they need to be remanded to the alternative school because they had a Tylenol, maybe we need to talk, because that's questions we get from principals quite a bit. They had a Tylenol, do we need to remand them to the alternative school? I don't necessarily think that's what's... Yes, yeah. Yes, and so one approach may be to look at Code of Conduct to see where it fits there instead of it being so heavy on something like that.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we postpone it to the next policy meeting. Gives everybody some more time to look into options. We can have further discussion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to abstain or oppose?
I oppose.
Oppose. That's Ms. Rosales and Ms. Bratton opposes. So the last one, back to K.
All right, so this is the library material policy. We have been doing a lot of stuff on it, and actually, we were actually making some changes about an hour and a half before the policy committee. So can your laptop take over?
Yeah, I'd send it to Monica. Can you pull up the... Do you want to give me a background on how it kind of came to fruition and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So there was a state law change that allow for some changes to the library material policy. The main changes here, and we, of course, will go through a lot of this, and Dr. Sullivan, you jump in wherever. We've taken some language, I think, to start here at the beginning, lines 2 and 3. That was from Sumner County, I believe, just for some protection properties. Can you scroll down a little bit? Some of the main changes, I'll just start going over some of that, is having a library review committee. So as it was recent, you can stop there. You might have to go back up a lot because there's a few.
There's lots of changes here.
Yeah.
We've got the review.
There's
comment.
notes all
It's a
down
new
the
one.
side.
No, it's a new one.
Yeah. So yeah, you can almost disregard, not completely, but the one that's in your policy packet. The Library Review Committee, it was initially, I think in policy, it was done at the local level as far as each individual school. So if there was a complaint, they would give it to, they notified the principal, of course, notified the director of schools, but the principal then would put together a committee himself or herself, and then they would review the book, they would review the content in question, they would make a decision, let the director know of that decision. Where we have it laid out here, it takes a little bit of the extra work from several different principals, maybe having to deal with the same book. It all happens at the district level. So you have a district, and I'm trying to read the language, District Library Material Review Committee. So it'd be one committee at the district level where the complaints, if they were made at any particular school, those complaints would then be submitted, and we have individuals here. I think we decided on assistant of curriculum. Where's that at?
You might have interjected for a second.
Go ahead.
So this was, you all had this sent to you yesterday, because I think that's when we got it from TSBA. It wasn't updated yesterday, so that's why it was added yesterday. So, in hearing from different people, Mr. Tidwell and I met today and kind of worked through some proposed changes to what was kind of submitted yesterday to work through some of these. When we're talking about library, it is a very contentious issue. I don't think any of us have the desire to have what's occurring in other local counties for that to be what is happening here, because that is not putting the focus on students and students' outcomes. So we're trying to work through some of these things. We scroll back up to the beginning again. Oh, you hit on that already. But this was something just to keep in law, because we know when we're dealing with these type of things, anytime you are limiting access, you have the potential for litigation. And so first comment, Rutherford County Board of Education supports principles of intellectual freedom inherent in the First Amendment of the United States. Just helps from that standpoint. The next section is all kind of the same, except for materials have not been removed previously. You will be able to see all the changes that were made on the copy you have in front of you, and then it just gets kind of color coded there for a little while. This is where, and any of this, of course, is perfectly up for debate. We just were trying to work through some things. So instead of saying that the chair of the board approves, we have other committees that are approved by the board, textbook committee and charter school committee, that the board approves every single year. So annually the board shall approve, originally it was 9, suggested 11, but you want an odd number. And there's a couple things here that we are looking at. You see the kind of team members, elementary, middle, and high school principal, certified library media personnel, and this was the addition because you're looking at books from kindergarten through 12th grade, having one media specialist that may not have the knowledge of all those. So elementary, middle, and high, classroom teachers, and at least 2 parents, legal guardians of students attending Rutherford County schools. The committee shall meet on an as-needed basis to address complaints received by the school or the district. So do we want to just take each point by point as we kind of go down through here and discuss, debate, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's totally fine. We had 9 members initially, and then we added in, you said a couple of different library media specialists. So what that committee is, if you can, my site,
Are we
I'm
working
gone
on
bad.
this sheet?
No. Yeah.
It's all on there.
Okay, because it's the same. Okay.
It's not
I got two
completely,
different ones.
yeah, there's
Okay,
just
'cause I
been
got two different
a few more minor changes. But as the committee, it shall, this is lines 25, shall consist of the following: elementary, middle, high school principal, there's 3, certified library media personnel from elementary, middle, and high school, there's 3 more, classroom teachers, and at least 2 parent legal guardians. So that's what your committee would be made up as, and that committee would be formed by vote from the board. As it sits right now at 11. If if y'all want to debate the changes to that, we can come back to that.
I wouldn't mind seeing 3 parents, not necessarily bumping it to 12, but as it is, you've got between the principals and the library staff, you've got 6 representing Rutherford County education, and then you would still have 2 teachers and then 3 parents.
Are you wanting a parent from elementary?
You could do that. A parent from each grade band would be great. Good idea, Claire.
You got it, yeah, that's, I'm totally open to that suggestion, but Are you requesting remove someone? You want an odd number?
No, leave it at 11, and that way it gives you two, because right now it would basically default to 3 teachers.
Yeah,
So it would give you 2 teachers.
fair enough.
And then 3 parents, 1 in each grade band.
You making notes over there? Okay. All right, we can scroll on down to the complaint portion.
Wait,
Oh, sorry.
it's okay.
Go right back on. Go ahead, Ms.
Back up. I really do like this idea of this committee. I would like to suggest that the board shall approve this committee after recommendations from the superintendent.
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Is that typically how we do the text?
Well, typically, the director appoints standing committees. That's one of his duties and jobs. So I think we should approve it. I think that's a great idea. But I think it should come from our director.
What about director and chair? Because I may not have a good idea of educators. I may not have a good idea.
I can go with director and chair.
Do that, too.
Yeah. And then approved by the board.
And approved by the board. Fair enough. Good. All right. Scrolling on down. All right, the complaint portion.
Lots of changes.
Yeah, there's
Two
lots of
different
changes.
Better
So
be.
it says, right now, it's scratched out, it says any resident of Rutherford County may submit a complaint as it's going to be currently stated. Did we not put it back in? I guess we didn't put it back in. It's going to be what the original language was, which I believe is a student. You must be a student, a staff member, or parent guardian.
It's the next line.
Oh, we did put it
I
back.
think it's employee. I think the law says
Oh, it's up there.
employee.
It's up there, I see it.
Yeah.
And it's limited, so, we're trying to think ahead of potential issues that may arise. So it's limited to 1 complaint, 1 book per complaint, and 5 books per academic year from that individual, so that we don't have someone trying to flood the system with a lot. The next item,
Can I ask, Caleb?
yes.
It looks at some point like you were looking at a resident of Rutherford County. I'm curious, I guess, why it's not that.
We were just debating back and forth different ideas. Oh, go
It's
ahead.
not the law, Ms. Darby.
That is the reason. So when we are looking at it, there's a couple. One, that's not the way the law is written. If the General Assembly wanted that option, I feel like the General Assembly would have put that option. They strictly went with this.
Okay.
Second, I feel like this, yes, any person in the community can have a vested interest in the school system, but in also protecting the sanctity of our district, I wanted to propose it to be people who are truly involved in the school system. But really, it came down to the General Assembly didn't put it in place. If you have the complaint procedure that goes all the way up to the State Department, they won't recognize
Have to be
that.
one of those.
They won't recognize it.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to item number 2, the first one listed stays the same. Second one listed, request the complainant to submit a request for reconsideration of library materials form to the principal and the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. We talked back and forth about, would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that, or?
Yeah, so we talked back and forth about, one, we don't want that to fall strictly on the principal and the number of emails that they get in a day. I don't feel like that's fair to put that strictly on the principal. 2, as a principal, you're always going to try to protect your school as well, so that makes sure that you're trying to do what's best for the district to make sure that we address issues that are there. We also looked at putting the newly approved library media specialist position there, but the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction oversees this position, and so it kind of removes that potential conflict of interest and makes so that when you get down to the carrying out the policy, that could then fall instead on the library media specialist, where they're not a voting member of the committee. They're not involved in receiving the complaints. They're kind of separate from it and can just run it. But I could argue either way. I was just kind of working through it.
3 and 4 stayed the same. Number 5, upon receipt of the completed form, the principal and the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction shall notify the director, who's just going to notify the board that the process has started and these are the books that are moving toward the review committee. Number 6, the principal shall request review of the challenge material by the district libraries review committee within 25 business days. The principal shall provide the committee with a copy of the challenged material. And we have discussed, I'm just going to butt in here, we have discussed what that's going to look like. So we're not, the way that the form, which we may have to work on a little bit of the edges on that, but the way that it should be submitted is get the author, you get the obviously the title of the book, the author, the content in question, and page number. It doesn't feel useful or efficient for somebody to submit a complaint without showing what that content in question is exactly. It'll be more efficient. The purpose of this, I'll just go ahead and tell you the intent. The purpose of this intent, or the intent of this, is to make sure that we are putting the right material, that nothing's got slipped in or anything, that we're protecting. We're not after classics, the Huckleberry Finns. This has nothing to do with that. We're talking about more like sexual material, pornographic material, those types of deals. So if there is content there that is unsuitable or age inappropriate, it should be listed. I could give examples if we needed to, but it's the purpose is to be efficient. We don't want this committee to have to read 2,500 pages in 25 days. Does that make sense? Moving on, the committee will inform the director of schools and the principal of the review committee's progress. Complaints will be reviewed in the following order. If multiple complaints are received, then we decided that it would be best that the order, if there's a lot of complaints, the order of priority will be parent-guardian complaints, student complaints, and then employee complaints. And then, of course, we've strictened some language there because of the previous comment by Mr. Sullivan. The committee may extend the review period beyond 25 days if multiple complaints are received. So if we get just a load at one time, which I do not anticipate, but if that were to happen, they can extend it. Number 7 stays the same. We didn't really make, if you go back up just a little bit, yeah. This just talks about the process. So they're going to read, review, and listen to the contested material in its entirety, the contested material in its entirety. So again, just want to emphasize, get a 1,200-page book. They're not going to have to read that in 25 days to get the context of what's in question. Check general acceptance of the material by reading. None of this is changed here except we added in, upon final review at the committee meeting, the members of the committee by majority will vote to reach a decision. Pretty simple there. All committees, the purpose of the committee is to come to a decision so that recommendation can be made. Everybody still with me? Good? Okay. All right. Number 8, the decision of the committee may be appealed, and the director of schools shall report the committee's decision to the board. The board may review the committee's decision on library material not appealed to the director of schools.
For that, do we want to add at the next scheduled meeting? Probably.
That's fair.
Committee's decision to the board. It's amazing every time I read it.
We add just a hair. Yep. You get that, Monica? All right. Then we'll just address appeals, and this is a little bit repetitive, but basically, as the process reads out, that if the complainant is not satisfied with the committee's findings for whatever reason, they can appeal to the director of schools. Then he will make a decision as to whether he or she will make a decision as to whether or not the material was age appropriate or suitable content. If they are unsatisfied, which he has a 15-day period to review that content, and we scroll down a little bit, if the complainant decides to appeal beyond, they're not satisfied with the director of schools, they can appeal to the board, which the board's decision would be similar as the director's decision as far as age and appropriate material levels of the student, but the board's decision would then be final.
I did ask if under the director of schools, if I could just leave it for 15 days and not sign it and just it goes into play anyway. I was told no, but it seemed like a good try.
He tried the governor.
I did try. I was like, can I just leave it for 15 days?
That's fair. I liked it.
I tried.
So anyway, that just addresses the appeals. And then at the bottom, I think this is more of the legal language, but I'll just read up, skipped a little bit. I'll just read a little bit of this here. Removal of the library materials. If it is determined by the committee or on an appeal that the material is not appropriate for the age and maturity levels of the students who have access to them, or it is not suitable for and consistent with the educational mission of the school, the material shall be removed from the library collection or restricted to the appropriate grade. The committee will make a recommendation to either remove from a specific school library, specific grade band, or all grade bands and districts. Any determination to remove, restrict, or otherwise limit access to the library materials to students in specific grades shall apply to all school libraries and schools within the district. So
We have both options there.
we put both of these on here. Now, it is of my opinion that this is happening at the district level. And the reason that this happens at the district level is because it does not make any sense to me that if it's inappropriate at one school, that it would then be appropriate at a different school. It takes that out of all the principals having to review one particular book that's went into several different schools, all separately. I think this kind of leaves it back up at the district level and applies to the whole district. We have people representing the district in this committee from different parts. So for me, I recommend that we stay with any determination to remove, restrict, or otherwise limit access to the library materials to the students in a specific grade shall apply to all school libraries and schools within that district. So if it is found, I'll just give you an example. If a book is found in a middle school to be age inappropriate for middle schoolers, then it would be removed from all middle schools and elementary schools. If it's inappropriate for middle schools, it is certainly inappropriate for elementary schools. If it is found to be inappropriate at high schools, it's removed from the district. There's not a crowd for it in our educational system. So that was the following pieces after that. Is there another page? I think there's one more page.
Mr. Tidwell,
Yes, ma'am.
that is against the law.
Against the law?
That is against the law. Would you like me to read it to you?
Yes, it would.
This is from Public Chapter State of Tennessee, Public Chapter number 472. This is where you got this, changing the law. But this says that the LEA, or if the LEA or public charter school, including the local board of education or public charter school governing body, determines that material contained in the school's library collection is not appropriate for the age and maturity levels of the students who may access the materials, or is not suitable for or consistent with the educational mission of the school, then the school shall remove the material from the library collection. That's that school's library collection, Mr. Tidwell, not the district. Now, when you have that up there in green, that might be a way to look at it if it needs to be removed district-wide, but I am totally against what you have in yellow.
Thank you. So that's an interesting interpretation. Can we get a little firmer opinion on that? And I could be wrong. We'll find out here shortly. But my opinion would have been, as I understand it, the law by the state means that we got to abide by that. It doesn't mean that we can't magnify what the law is. That's what the board's here for. Otherwise, there would be no use for a board. Everything could happen at the state.
And there'd be no
Just shove
use
it
for
down.
law, sir. If we're just going to usurp the law, why do we have it?
I'm not usurping the law whatsoever. That's why I'm asking for clarification on that. But what I'm suggesting is that is the minimum requirement. We can go beyond the minimum as long as we don't violate the law. So I don't think that would be, in my interpretation, which I am no lawyer, we have two sitting here, I don't think that would be a violation of the law. While they're looking that up, do you mind if I just finish the last little portion and we come back to that? So the last portion, we added in some stuff here. This is straight from TSBA. And it just goes into what the description of harmful to minors is, obscene. You can kind of scroll down just a little bit and it'll show that as a whole. We added in some language here, and this is directly from the state at the bottom, just describing, one of the items that was in questions, it lists up here as far as nudity, a sculpture. And so if they're learning about Roman literature, something like that, and there's a picture of a sculpture in there. There's a line in here, it's C here, taken as a whole, like serious literacy, artistic, political, or scientific values for minors. So obviously, taken as a whole, when you're reading Roman literature, you are going to run into some statues. So.
I appreciate Mr. Tidwell and I met on that. Was one of my main things that I saw today. I was like, I'm looking at this going, all of our anatomy and physiology books, our biology books, so like every art book that we have, and so.
I got just an information question. So the policy that we had in place before, was it not in line with state law, or we just felt we need to increase it?
State changed it because it used to go straight from school to Board of Education. The state changed it to give the LEA the ability to put multiple other things in place. I think that's the way it was.
Yeah, that's true.
Was there anything?
Are we waiting for a?
Are we waiting for a ruling from Mr. Reed? Okay.
Clarifying question. So we have a couple of headers as far as the appeal process, and it does a little bit in the removal of library materials section talk about, the removal of a particular book should the committee decide that. If a parent or a student or an employee decides to appeal, does that book stay in the library collection until the appeal process is completed? Or is it removed until the appeal process?
It stays in. Until a decision has been made,
It stays in the collection.
Yeah, the state law does say it can be removed from the library, but in that particular school, that's what the legislation says. I think if this committee wanted to make it broader and have it removed from the system, I don't see anything under Public Chapter 472 prohibiting that. If the committee chose to make it broader than what the state allows in that case. Because the state legislation does say that it can be removed from that school's library. So that's what it says. There's no prohibition, though, from it being removed from the whole district. And I think if this committee chose to make it a prohibition from the whole district, we would be within the school system's power to do that if you choose to do that.
Yes, so that kind of goes back to the point that I was trying to stress, is I think the state law, they make the minimum, and then the board can then go deeper into that same subject, which is why, and I just have not heard a good example of how it would be appropriate ruled inappropriate at a district level for one school and then not
I don't
another.
have anything that's happened this year. When is the last time we removed a book? I mean, how egregious was it? I mean, what was it?
We've removed books, Claire. I have gone to Dr. Sullivan and I've removed, and he's been amazing at looking at books with
Well, I don't
inappropriate
doubt that there are,
content.
maybe
It's been a
there are
piece for y'all.
instances, but
We can provide you with pictures if you really want to see them.
We have been able to
You
do that.
don't want to see them.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
In my opinion, because this is a committee that is comprised of people from the school district, not just the school, and if you have 11 people that agree from the community that the book is inappropriate, I think that we could accept that. And my other point of view is if you have a school that all parents are involved, it's Central Middle School, and those parents will speak up. You take another school that is lower socioeconomic, and those parents are not going to speak up. They're not going to care what book is in that school. So I think, again, if you've got that big committee that is made up of all the schools representing the district, then I think we can leave those words in there within the district.
Okay,
I do wanna
Susan?
say-
Okay, go ahead, Caitlin.
I do want to say Rutherford County is wonderful because it's so diverse. And I think what we see is appropriate at one school may not be seen as appropriate things align with values in some of our areas or demographic areas, and some things may not align with values in other areas. So I think taking it by case and community by community basis is really important. I would have a hard time making a decision for every school within this community if it's not individually seen by every school in our community.
But is this, green is suggesting one way and yellow is suggesting another? Am I reading that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, could you read it out? Some of us sitting at this end can't see as well.
Oh, no, that's all right. So the committee will make this is the green. The committee will make a recommendation to either remove from a specific school, specific grade band, or all grade bands and district schools. That's one. The other option is any determination to remove, restrict, or otherwise limit access to library materials to students in a specific grade shall apply to all schools, all school libraries and schools within the district. The difference being all schools and libraries in the district at that grade level and below. So middle school and elementary, well, obviously middle school removal would cause elementary removal. Elementary removal would just be elementary schools, and high school would be out of the district.
Would it be fair to say that if you went with the green, it kind of leaves it up to the committee, and the committee could say, we think this is inappropriate for elementary school, period, in the district?
Or not? I mean, if you're going to have this committee, which I'm going to say again is an excellent idea, why couldn't they be the ones to make that determination rather than we make a determination that's what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, no, there are two different proposals here. I am against the yellow, but I am okay with the
I
green.
will say this, Ms. Bratton, that the green, as it does read, they both allow for the same thing, because the last line of the green portion is all grade bands and district schools. So it is still possible in the green recommendation to do it. It just leaves open the opportunity for it to be done to a specific school library. What was you going to say something? Oh, I thought you were saying
Yeah, I was going to say, so if, let's say that green allows for it to be removed, if it gets, because green allows and it gets to the board on appeal, can the board then at any time take whatever action they see fit since it was an option?
Yes, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you, even the way green gives that committee the option to provide a recommendation, but then the board could always make a recommendation different.
So yes, at any point in time, the way this is written, the board could make whatever recommendation they would like. But at the committee level, both options are on the table.
Mr. Marks, did you?
Well, I was just gonna say, both options to me, they're fairly similar. You have this committee, the committee's gonna do what they do, they're gonna read the book, and they're gonna make their determination, and they're gonna say, okay, this is what we feel as a committee, what we feel should happen. And I think just the language of it just kind of gives you all the availability to say, well, we don't agree with this, or we do. But I also want to make the point of, I hear what you're saying about different communities. But when I look at the board, like when I look at the committee is made up of a body of teachers, administrators, and you have these three separate parents. If you end up picking parents who, let's say you only get them from Smyrna High, Laverne Elementary, and then Blackman Elementary, okay, or Blackman, yeah, whatever. Those three people may not hold the same values of their community. So I think that's a flawed way to look at it as well. Me being a parent, I look at it this way. You all represent our district. You all have different areas that you're over, you have different schools that you govern over. So what I'm expecting is that the person that's over mine, I'm expecting them to hold a value to where if there's a book in a middle school library that my middle schooler could pick up that's obscene, I'm expecting them to handle that. That's what I'm expecting, because that's what I voted for you for. Is I voted for you to make those tough decisions and say, that's inappropriate. Just because my next door neighbor is from wherever and they think that it's appropriate, I I don't believe that that's right. I think it's what's morally right when it comes to kids. And regardless of whether I love Jesus or I don't, all of that doesn't matter. It's a moral standard that we have to educate kids. And if there's something in the library that is inappropriate, has sexual content in an elementary school, I would expect it to be pulled from the entire school district, not just from that one elementary school, because that's inappropriate for that age group. So regardless of how that reads or whatever, I would be all for the committee saying that's inappropriate, and I would expect you all, as our district educational leaders, to say that's inappropriate, we're going to do what the committee said, and we're going to pull it. Just my 2 cents.
One more thing, and that goes along with what he said. The school board doesn't make policy for just one school. They make policy for all the schools.
School board doesn't make policy for just one parent either, Susan. And I see this as a very narrowing kind of attitude.
Even with the 11 committee members from all.
I said I like the committee part. I don't like the yellow part. But the committee part makes sense because it is supposed to be. That's why I suggested that the director and the chair make up that committee to make sure that doesn't happen. That you've got a varied and diverse committee looking at all of this, and it can't all come from Smyrna High and Laverne High. You know, you've got to get out into your different community to be able to make decisions for everyone. And I see the green part as being able to make decisions for everyone, and I see the yellow part as very restrictive.
I would just like to say, for anybody out there that has not seen some of the books that I think this policy is truly meant for, this is not a way to censor or divide or not honor somebody's heritage or anything of that nature. I know when I look at this policy, I'm looking at it from a place of protecting our children from things that there is not a single way that anybody is ever going to convince me that it's appropriate, regardless of where you came from, what your background is. There is a line that I feel at some point Rutherford County Schools has to draw at what is or is not appropriate at certain age levels for children to have access to. From my own personal experience from books, these are things that as an adult, I am like, oh my gosh, and they have been in our schools. So I don't want anyone to walk away with the misconception that when we're discussing this policy, that it's going to be this nitpicky, like super harsh. This is what I'm assuming is going to be books that are brought up that I think, I would hope that at least 95% of the people on the committee could look at and be like, oh, this should not be at an elementary school. No way, no how. Not something that's going to be questionable. And if you want your kid to read that, by all means, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, public library, I'm not trying to restrict you as a parent on what you want your child to read. I do have an issue with what we're using our education system and our taxpayer money to purchase and give access to our kids to. So that's the way I perceive this policy. It's more of a protection because unfortunately there are things that have somehow made their way into our schools that if you put it up on a screen in a movie, you wouldn't show it in a classroom. So the fact that it's in written word versus a picture, for me, is no different. It's still meant to elicit the same response, and it's an inappropriate thing for certain ages. That's my 2 cents.
I think I would agree on everything, on most things, that especially when we're talking about sexual content. The way the policy is written, it covers more than just sexual content. So it also covers vulgar language, substance abuse, and violence. And some, especially in some parts of our community, substance abuse is a bigger issue than it is in others. And so I could see some areas not wanting a book that covered something with substance abuse and some wanting it. And so that is just, it's not just the sexual nature of the policy that it's written. I think we'd all probably pretty much agree on the sexual nature of it. The only other part, because I also have to look at it from a legal perspective, is that we have to make sure we're not removing anything from political or ideological differences. So it all has to be from something outside of that, because we're never going to be able to, in a diverse community, to be able to accomplish that.
Wouldn't the green part take care of that as far as the way it's written? That gives the recommendation, and then if we needed to make sure it wasn't taken out of, like you said, for some political reason, or it gives the community an opportunity to voice their opinion, hey, this is good for us.
And ultimately, the board still has all of that power anyway, but from a school system standpoint, I feel like it would help the operational side from being involved in lawsuits. School board can do as they see fit as anything.
You see just the word specific out of the green, would that take away the yellow maybe instead of saying from the specific school?
Well, I think the specific school library, it just leaves it, the yellow is just kind of more of a one option. It gets rid of out of all and below, right? And the green still allows for that, but it gives the committee the ability to choose, specific grade level, specific grade band, or all and below.
I'm sorry, no, go
No,
ahead.
y'all go. I was going to make a motion, so y'all go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think a lot more people would be comfortable if we just remove the yellow, because the green allows for the yellow to happen if that's what the committee chooses to do. So I think it's Probably not necessary, and I think you'll have better luck passing your motion maybe if you remove the yellow.
No, what gives you that? It gives options.
Sure.
And it does not tie hands. And I don't think anybody here wants to tie hands. We don't want to tie administrators' hands in, as Katie, I was ready to take her on. She knew it. She took one look at me and said, hey. But she made that policy so that I could accept what she was saying when she was just changing language. I thought she was trying to do something else. I am going to say this to you, Mr. Tidwell.
Oh, getting personal.
Pardon?
Getting personal.
Yeah, that's kind of personal, sir. What made you decide that we needed all of this instead of what we had and could go back and add in the great idea of the district review committee? What made you decide this was an avenue?
I feel that's a great question. I feel that if a book is inappropriate, so I have 3 young kids, they're all in elementary school, Barfield. If a book is inappropriate and it has made it into their school library for whatever reason, publisher, whoever, overlooked, I'm not blaming, I don't know who to blame, so I'm not blaming anybody. But if it's made it into their school library and their innocent hands go over there and pick it up and start scrolling through things that they shouldn't be seeing at 8, 9, you're going to have a different person up here at this board. So that's what did it.
I understand what you're saying, but my question is
Why do it at the district level?
Why all of this? What was wrong with what we had and putting more language to that?
Sure. So the big difference for me goes back to you had all this put on the administrators at each individual school. And I understand that, that you're not excited about the part of taking out of all the grades or that and below, or removing it as the district portion. But if I show you some pornographic content that was at some of our middle schools that I looked up last night, or I show you some of the pornographic language that I have on this computer that I checked last night at some of our high schools, and I read that to you, which I wouldn't read in front of my children, I think that would make an easy decision for a review committee at the district level to say, this is not what we are intending to do as far as education. That's why.
You still haven't answered my question.
Well, yeah, it's just one person. It saves everybody else from having to do everything.
But haven't we already passed a library material policy? Am I imagining that?
This is completely different. It's a district review committee. It's doing it for the whole district.
But why couldn't we have added the language to the policy we had? What made you decide to completely rewrite a policy that you didn't agree with?
I feel like I've explained that a few times.
Well,
But-
perhaps I'm just stupid.
I don't think you like my answer of the
No, I
grade
don't.
portion.
Because I don't understand why you didn't take the policy that we had and come in with some of these good ideas.
This is the policy we had, and I just changed, see all the markings, the red, the highlights, that was many, many discussions, many changes. So it was the policy we had.
Well, it just appears to me that the next time one of my policies don't pass, I can just rewrite it.
I think that's the only way to do it. But with that, I will say that I would like to make a motion that this gets approved. We can, with the language that we've added so far, we can remove the yellow highlighted portion. That would leave the committee with making a decision about whether it be a specific school or that grade level across the district.
I'd like to second.
To tell us exactly what you've just said.
Would you read out the changes that we made, please?
I do want to, I appreciate Mr. Tidwell. We've had a lot of honest conversation around, none of this is fun. It's not fun at all, so I appreciate your work with
For
it.
the record, what's on the screen right here is a huge improvement to what I received from my email yesterday, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate that we've added 3 librarians to our committee. All librarians in Rutherford County have a master's degree. They are trained in acquisitions. They're trained in what is school appropriate for the area that they serve. So I do appreciate the work that you guys did today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Just start at the very beginning.
Right, that's what I've asked for.
Mr. Young, on my,
I was just wondering, why is it such a rush to do this? Because we just got this yesterday, so I really think we need some time to look over this. It's like, to me, we're making a decision here. We really don't have all the information yet.
What information would need to be added?
Well, I mean, we hadn't had time to analyze it. I ain't talked to a constituent about this at all. I've had one complaint about library books since I've been on the school board. And I just think we need to totally understand this.
I do. I'm going to make a motion that we move forward.
I was gonna say,
We already
it's
had a
already been
second, so
seconded.
if you don't mind reading.
okay, let me try to read what the changes would be.
First
The
line,
first one,
yeah,
yeah.
first line overall
First line?
is new. That was not from last night's version, so I've got last night's version. Let me go back, that's probably the easiest.
Okay, the blue,
Yes,
okay,
so
lines
lines
2 and 3 would be.
2 and 3 are new.
Then, I don't know which.
Yep, go down to line, what would originally be line 18 on what you had last night. And now it would say annually the board, nope.
That
Annually,
was a change.
We changed that to the board shall approve upon recommendation of the director of schools and the chair. 11-member district library materials review committee.
Will that committee be created at the beginning of the year, or will it be created as needed?
I would recommend we create it at the beginning of the year, just like we do with charter school applications, even if we don't need them.
So do we need to put the month in there?
Yep, in August.
Didn't you
I think it's further down.
Okay.
All right? Then that,
In that
This is 11.
second one, it's still going to stay 11.
11, okay, okay.
It's just going to change from 2 parents to 3.
yes, the red language, the committee shall consist of the following: an elementary, middle, high school principal, certified library media personnel from elementary, middle, and high, classroom teachers, and 3 parents, and a parent from each grade level.
That's
Well, grade band, right?
Grade band, yep.
Grade band.
Board members remember,
Yes, so instead of 3 teachers, you'll have 2 teachers.
2 teachers and 3 parents.
Right. one from elementary.
And also remind the board, you guys will get this again as an official policy to vote on. And this is one that, even though we've up against the time frame, I would recommend we'd probably do it on 2 readings just to give people time. From avoiding all kinds of controversy, I'd love to do it on a first read, but to be fair and transparent, I think we do it on
Better
2
do two,
readings.
yeah.
Then the complaint shall be limited to 1 book and be from a student parent, or guardian, or a school employee. Submit more than no 5 complaints per academic year. All that would stay the same, correct? Number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that form going? Does it have to come to you for that form, or how?
Yeah, we'll go type the form up, because usually forms come through administrative procedures, and then we'll post it on the website, make sure everybody's aware of it too. Yep.
And then number 8, we added at the next scheduled meeting, the board may review the committee's decision on library material not appealed to the director of schools at the next regular scheduled board
Yes,
meeting?
yep.
Okay. And then, all that red would stay.
Last chance to add in that it can sit on my desk for 15 days.
And then, instead of the yellow, we would just keep the green. The committee will make a recommendation to either remove from a specific school library, specific grade band, or all grade bands and district schools. And then that,
And those do, I know those are a little bit, definitions are a little bit wordy, but that came strictly from the new public chapter. With definitions that we did not include. We did not include the definitions in the policy, but the definitions are linked if anybody wants to look them up.
so do we want to do a roll call vote?
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Could I say one thing? I do appreciate what you've done. I mean, you knew I was upset. But I do appreciate the fact that you've gone back and done all of this work.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tidwell,
Yes.
Ms. Bratton,
Yes.
Ms. Darby,
Yes.
Ms. Maxwell,
Yes.
Ms. Rosales,
Yes.
Mr. Young.
For a vote, I still think that we need to start putting time frames on these things. We don't need to put last-minute policies in here and start voting on them. We need to put a time frame on here, and it needs to be presented to this committee several days before we vote. We'll vote yes for this because it's the right thing to do, but this is not the right way to do it. Yes.
Dr. Martin? Dr. Goulian?
Yes.
Mr. Creasy? Ms. Creekmore? Ms. Benavides? Ms. Quessenberry? Mr. Brooks? Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Cannot believe we got a unanimous vote on the library.
Unanimous.
Mr. Tidwell, we're going out to dinner tonight because we.
Mr. Tidwell, would you like to give the motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you for everyone's hard work.
Susan?